A cold stone floor in the belly of a Roman prison. It is dark. It smells of damp earth, rust, and unwashed bodies. An old man sits on the ground, his wrist chained to a heavily armed guard. In his free hand, he holds a small, frayed piece of parchment. His back is covered in thick, silver scars from beatings that should have killed him years ago. You can imagine the cold seeping into his frail bones. You can hear the rhythmic, heavy breathing of the Praetorian guard next to him. The old man knows exactly what is coming. Tomorrow, or perhaps the day after, the heavy iron door at the end of the hall will swing open. The executioner will walk in. His future is a guarantee of violence. He has every logical reason to be paralyzed by the terror of tomorrow. Yet, he dips his reed pen into a small clay inkwell and begins to write a letter to a group of friends in a city hundreds of miles away. And the words he writes in this pitch-black, suffocating cell are about peace. We will read that letter. We will find out what this old man knew about the future that we have completely forgotten, but not yet. Because to understand how he survived the terror of tomorrow, you have to understand the invisible battle you fight every single day. This is not a story about positive thinking. This is not a story about manifesting a better life. This is not a story about pretending everything is fine. This is a story about the violent war for your mind. Here's what most people miss about anxiety. We treat it like a uniquely modern disease. We think it is a product of our smartphones, our news cycles, and our exhausting schedules. But 2,000 years ago, long before any of that existed, a 30-something Jewish rabbi stood on a grassy hillside in Galilee. He looked out at a sea of exhausted, heavily taxed, terrified peasants, and he told them to do something that sounded absolutely impossible. He told them to stop living in a future that does not exist. He looked at people who did not know where their next meal was coming from and said, "Do not worry about tomorrow." When you hear Jesus say, "Do not worry about tomorrow," you probably picture him giving a polite, spiritual TED Talk to a comfortable, well-fed crowd. That is not what happened. The first-century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus documented the grim reality of Galilee during this exact era. The people sitting on the grass listening to Jesus were crushed under a brutal, suffocating tax system imposed by the Roman Empire and Herod Antipas. They were losing their ancestral lands. They were living day to day, one bad harvest away from absolute starvation. They were not worrying about their retirement accounts or their social status. They were terrified their children would not eat. And into that desperate, heavy reality, Jesus drops a profound truth. He uses a very specific Greek word, Merimnao. We translate it into English simply as worry. But the literal translation is much more violent. It means to be drawn in opposite directions. It means a divided mind. Jesus is telling these exhausted peasants that anxiety is not just a passing feeling. It is a fracture of the soul. Half of your mind is trapped in a future that does not exist yet, while your physical body is stuck in the present. You are literally tearing yourself apart. You are trying to fight a battle in a time zone you have not even reached. But it gets stranger. Because this human addiction to controlling the future goes back long before Rome. 1,500 years earlier, an exhausted 80-year-old man named Moses stood in the scorching heat of the Sinai desert. He was leading 1 million refugees who had just escaped slavery in Egypt, and they were starving. God responds to their cries with a miracle. Bread falls from the sky every single morning, manna, but God gives them one strict, unbending rule. Gather only enough for today. Do not save any for tomorrow. You can put yourself in their dusty sandals. You have been hungry for weeks. You finally have real food in your hands, but the terror of tomorrow whispers in your ear. What if the bread does not come back? What if the sky is empty tomorrow morning? What if God forgets us? So, out of sheer panic, you hide some away. You try to control the future. You try to build a physical fortress against tomorrow's uncertainty. And what happens? The book of Exodus tells us the hoarded bread rotted overnight. It bred worms. It stank. Because God's grace is given for today, when you try to stockpile grace for a tomorrow that hasn't happened yet, it turns toxic. The illusion of control will always rot in your hands. And this is where it gets remarkable. Even the greatest giants of the faith shattered under the crushing weight of tomorrow. Think of the prophet Elijah, a man who literally stood on the peak of Mount Carmel and watched fire fall from heaven. He saw the impossible. He watched God completely defeat hundreds of false prophets. He experienced the ultimate spiritual victory. But the very next day, Queen Jezebel sends him a message. She promises to have him killed by tomorrow. Elijah does not remember the fire. He does not remember the massive miracle of yesterday. He is so utterly consumed by the terror of a future threat that he runs out into the barren wilderness, collapses under a solitary broom tree, and begs God to let him die. The man who just faced down an entire army of enemies was completely defeated by a ghost. A future that had not even arrived. How often do you do exactly the same thing? You survive a crisis. God provides for you. You see a breakthrough. But the very second a new threat appears on the horizon, a bad medical report, a financial crisis, a rumor at work, you forget everything you have already survived. You sit under your own broom tree, paralyzed by a tomorrow that hasn't even happened. From the scorching sand of the Sinai desert to the grassy hillsides of Galilee, the human story is exactly the same. We are addicted to living in a future that does not exist. We let the ghosts of tomorrow rob us of the manna falling today. We tear our own minds in half. If you have ever stared at the ceiling in the middle of the night, losing sleep over a tomorrow that hasn't even happened yet, take a second and hit the subscribe button, because we are about to look at the only way to break that exhausting cycle. Jesus did not just diagnose the disease of anxiety. He provided the exact cure, and it requires stepping out of the boat. Picture a violent storm on the Sea of Galilee. It is the middle of the night. A group of men are trapped in a small wooden boat, soaked to the bone, fighting for their lives against the crashing waves. Then they see him, Jesus, walking calmly on the churning water. Peter, a rugged, impulsive fisherman, does the unthinkable. He steps over the edge of the boat. For a few glorious, impossible seconds, Peter is actually doing it. He is physically standing on top of a raging sea. As long as his eyes are locked on Jesus in the present moment, the laws of physics are suspended. He is safe. The miracle is happening right now. But then, Peter makes a fatal mistake. He looks away from Jesus and stares at the wind and the waves. He sees a massive swell rising in the distance. He calculates what that wave is going to do to him when it finally hits. In a fraction of a second, his mind projects into the immediate future. He imagines drowning, and the exact moment he leaves the present and visits a future he cannot control, he begins to sink. Pay attention to this. The water did not pull Peter under. The future pulled him under. He tried to fight tomorrow's wave with today's strength, and it completely crushed him. Anxiety will always pull you beneath the surface. This is exactly why Jesus taught his followers to pray in a very specific, disciplined way. You have heard the prayer 1,000 times, "Give us this day our daily bread." But the Greek word used there is incredibly rare, epiousios. It appears almost nowhere else in ancient Greek literature. It means, quite literally, just enough for the coming day. Jesus is pulling his listeners right back to Moses and the manna in the Sinai desert. He is drawing a hard line in the sand of time. God's provision, his grace, his strength, his presence is dispensed in daily increments. It is not handed out in bulk in advance. When you project your mind into next week, or next month, or next year, you are traveling to a place where God's grace has not yet been given. God is with you right now, in the present. He will be with you tomorrow. But he does not provide tomorrow's strength until tomorrow arrives. You are drowning under the weight of your own imagination. You are standing on the water of today, but sinking because you are staring at the waves of tomorrow. It is 3 o'clock in the morning. You are lying in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. The house is completely quiet. In this exact present moment, you are perfectly safe. You are warm. You are breathing. But your heart is racing. Your chest feels tight, as if a heavy stone is resting on it. Why? Because your mind has violently manufactured a tragedy about a future that has not even happened yet. You are imagining the worst possible outcome of a doctor's appointment. You are writing the script of a painful conversation you haven't had yet. You are mapping out financial ruin. Your physical body is reacting to a ghost. You are terrified of a phantom. Here is the part nobody tells you. You do not have to live this way. Leave your quiet bedroom. Go all the way back to that dark, damp, underground cell in Rome. The old man we saw at the very beginning, sitting on the cold stone floor, chained to a Praetorian guard. His name is Paul. His tomorrow is not a phantom. It is a terrifying reality. He knows the Emperor Nero is completely insane. He knows the executioner's sword is waiting for him. If anyone in human history has the right to let their mind fracture into 1,000 pieces of panic, it is this scarred, exhausted apostle. He has every right to succumb to the crushing weight of Merimnao. Yet, look closely at the frayed piece of parchment in his hand. Look at the letter he is writing to his friends in the city of Philippi. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Paul is not practicing positive thinking. He is not pretending the executioner does not exist. He is practicing radical presence. He is refusing to visit a tomorrow where God has not yet arrived. He knows something you forget at 3 in the morning. He knows that his Father is already standing in tomorrow, waiting for him. When Jesus stood on that Galilean hillside and told those desperate peasants not to worry, he was not giving them a crushing, legalistic demand to suppress their very real human emotions. He was giving them a rescue plan. He was throwing a lifeline to drowning people. He was telling you to stop suffocating yourself by trying to breathe tomorrow's air with today's lungs. If you want to stop drowning in the anxiety of what might happen, you have to anchor yourself to what is happening right now. You need to remember 3 things before you close your eyes tonight. First, worry is not a minor personality flaw. It is a literal fracturing of your soul. Every time you surrender to Merimnao, you pull yourself away from the only time zone where God's grace is actively operating, the present. Second, the reason you feel so exhausted is that you are trying to carry a weight you were never designed to hold. You are suffocating because you are trying to breathe tomorrow's air with today's lungs. Stop hoarding the manna. God will give you exactly what you need, the exact moment you need it, not a second before. Third, and most importantly, you do not have to fear tomorrow because your Father is already standing there waiting for you. He owns the future. You do not. What is the tomorrow you are trying to control right now? What is the wave you are staring at? Let me know in the comments below. He gives grace for the day, just for the day, and the day is enough.